All right, look, I am saying very clearly that a downgrade of America's financial reputation looks more likely this Monday morning. And I'm also saying when it's all said and done, it will be on this president's watch. He owns this. Former Clinton pollster Bernard Whitman is here. He's laughing, aren't you?
No, I think a downgrade would be a disaster for the economy. Yep. But I tell you, Tracy, you are absolutely wrong. The American people have already spoken. They would blame the House Republicans for this. The Republicans can never resist Let me explain. They can never resist overreaching. They swept into office in '95, shut down the government, were thrown out a few years later, swept into office again in 2010. If this government does not raise the debt ceiling, or they do raise the debt ceiling and Moody's downgrades the debt, the Republicans will be punished. They've already said.
If the Republicans pass cut, cap, and balance like they want to, there's no way they're going to blame the Republicans for this at the end of the day.
Cut, cap, and balance is? It's
a plan.
Politics,
it's something the Democrats haven't offered us yet, Bernard.
Hold on. Regardless of who gets the blame, regardless of whether you can blame the Republicans successfully or not, my position is this. A downgrade looks very, very likely, okay? And if it happens, and I think it's likely it will happen, it will be on President Obama's watch. And he has to take some of the responsibility for it. He has to.
You know what we need? We need the two parties to actually come together. They were nearly together with the $4 trillion grand plan. I don't understand why common sense cannot prevail. You know, Tom Coburn can't wait to see what he's going to say at 2:30. We've got to cut $1 trillion out of defense. We have to raise the retirement age. We have to accept spending cuts. We have got to accept spending cuts, and we have to accept tax increases.
There's a limit to this, Bernard. There is a limit to this. You keep on throwing it on the Republicans. It's all the Republicans' fault. I understand you're a Democrat.
That's a two-way street.
And you're speaking
it is absolutely a two-way street.
But I want you to accept. I want to see the president accept some resposibility for this.
I think the president absolutely does. That's why he has said. That is why he has said. Pitch it back to the congressional leaders. Say you guys have got to come together and work this out.
On Friday, when the president gave that press conference, the very first question was, "What are you going to give us specifics on entitlement?" Right. You keep hinting at this, and he still failed to do it. He has to step up and be the leader right now. This is the time to forget. Right now, people keep saying that the president's leading from behind.
$4 trillion deal. The Republicans walked away. You know why? Because Boehner couldn't deliver it out of his conference, and Boehner and McConnell are, frankly, I cannot believe. I'm actually going to give Mitch McConnell credit here, but the Plan B is going to work. And you know what? You know who's going to benefit politically from that? The president and the Democratic Party, because they are going to be in charge of the economy. They're going to have to come up with $1 trillion.
Oh, right. So when he goes back to raise the debt ceiling three times before we vote, that's going to benefit him, because you know he's going to go back. He's going to keep raising that debt ceiling. As we continue to cut spending and raise taxes where appropriate, invest in infrastructure spending. That's what we have to do.
The president's so-called plan on cutting spending, which has no specifics in it whatsoever, is actually rear-end loading any kind of spending cuts.
Yes.
You get cuts in spending 8, 9, 10, 12 years from now. You get tax increases right up front. That's a lousy plan.
83%.
Standard & Poor's will not accept that plan. If that's the plan, they don't accept it. It's downgraded, and it's your president's fault.
First, 83% of that deal was spending cuts, 17% were tax increases. Second, do you know who the American people trust more?
When are the spending?
I'll
ask the question.
48 to 43, they trust Obama more than the Republicans.
I have to ask, when are the spending cuts going to occur? I'll tell you, 8, 9, 10, 12 years down the road. Promises of almost a decade.
Well, also
I
just want to bring this other thing up too. The president talked a lot Friday about polls, and I don't know what poll he was referring to. It sounded nuts to me. Should the president be leading based on the well-being of the country, or based on polls that might show that he's less culpable in the eyes of the public, no matter how far we go down the drain?
Charles, again, we've got to get real here. Mitch McConnell has said repeatedly, job number one for the Republican Party is to take out President Obama.
One president
that is why
right now. He's got to
are
make
having this ridiculous conversation about forcing a balanced budget amendment. That is not going to solve anything.
Okay, hold on, everybody.
It's not going to solve anything. If we had a balanced budget amendment in place, we would have gone into a recession and then a depression. Because we are not going to stimulate the economy.
Wait a second. I've got to go back to the market because the downside move for stocks is accelerating. So here's something else we've got to consider, but I'll stay with us for this. As there's the debt ceiling talks going on one hand. The other side of the coin is this. Goldman Sachs downgraded its outlook for the entire U.S. economy. Came out on Friday. They said, look, we're not going to get 2.5% growth for the economy. No, it's going to be 1.5%. and we're going to get 8.75% unemployment through to the end of next year. Looks to me like the market is saying, hey, Goldman Sachs is saying this, could be in for a recession, and you say?
I agree 1,000%. The only thing I would disagree with them on is I believe we've never left a recession. That's just my honest opinion. We had one big quarter where we spent a lot of money, and the fact is the underlying fundamentals have never changed. They've gotten worse as the time.
And you know why?
Wait a minute. Bernard, the markets are voting against the economic policies of this president.
We have got to get consumer spending again. 70% of the economy is consumer spending. That's why I think we need to extend the payroll tax holiday for employees, and I think we ought to have a payroll tax holiday for employers as well.
It's not the answer. People want jobs.
Yeah.
Consumer confidence is the lowest it's been since 2009.
And you know what?
And do you know what the big problem is, too? Dodd-Frank, coming out of Goldman Sachs, listen to what these banks are saying. You are going to crush credit. You're going to crush these banking systems all over again. That's why they're calling for recession number 2 or whatever, continuation of part 1, because you're going to kill the banking system.
This is President Obama's responsibility. He could be downgraded on his watch, and we may get close to another recession on his watch.
You know what? We have a divided government right now. John Boehner leads the House. He cannot deliver the votes from his conference, and I think Boehner and President Obama share in this equally. We have got to get the economy moving again. We have to invest in infrastructure.
What have Boehner and McConnell and Cantor got to do with the lousy economic performance as a result of this president's economic policies?
Because this president cannot work with this speaker to deliver votes from that conference to put spending back into the economy in terms of construction, or even in terms of...
Why should the Republicans double down on a failed policy? Why should we have a new infrastructure bank to create jobs for union members when it didn't work in the first place? How can you possibly expect Republicans who have voted in to reduce spending to go along with the president doubling down on a plan that's failed?
Because if the government reduces spending and consumers reduce spending, there ain't no money in the economy still.
Well, how about a tax cut for businesses?
Out.
How
about a payroll tax holiday for employers?
Let me just...
You know, to Stuart's... Charles, I'm sorry. To Stuart's point that all the cuts are in 9-10 years out from now, that's because this president doesn't want to take responsibility for hurting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
Look, you know what? I'm all in favor of raising the retirement age for Social Security right now. Start raising it over the next...
He doesn't want to cut spending. He doesn't want to. His heart is not in cutting spending, period.
There's another thing, guys.
He understands that the way forward has to be a cut in spending and raising
beyond the gimmickry stuff that we talk about a lot, the real fact is that banks are sitting on a lot of money, consumers are sitting on a lot of money, and businesses too. Here's the problem. Ronald Reagan talked about morning in America. Every time I hear the president speak, it feels like the dawn of America. It's like the clock is going to strike midnight. He has to figure out a way to unlock the animal spirits in this country, because we have the cure to our ills, and it's not pity, it's not self-pity, it's not borrowing billions of dollars from China.
In America, because people aren't going to be tied to dead-end jobs. They can take their health care with them.
Okay, sorry, time's up because I've got to get back to the markets. Bernard, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Stuart.